and with chicken manure and ocean spray cranberries and all kinds of stuff. I mean, we got paid to take a lot, paper, just on and on and on. And they sent me out to this greenhouse, the largest greenhouse production operation in Massachusetts, where they had sold them like a couple of tractor trailer loads the year before. Hey, go back and talk to them because they should buy some more. Well, they had grown poinsettias, and they were at a certain stage. And they stepped them up with this compost, and they had nice leaves, but they didn't grow any taller. They just stopped. And as far as that poinsettia grower, that's dead. If you don't get to the next size, it doesn't sell. And I went back and I go to the front desk to meet the man, and he's like, little voice comes over the intercom, just leave your stuff and go. I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? What? You won't even talk? No, just go, And so I get back on the phone. I'm like, what was the deal, man? He goes, oh, well, we sold them a bunch of compost, and they claimed that it wiped out 2 greenhouses worth of poinsettias, but it's not our fault. I said, yes, it was your fault, because I figured out it was high salts. And I said, man, I should have had like a stack of cash for those guys. They could have sued your ass, And oh well, it's not our fault. I'm like, you can't do that, So one of my first jobs in that compost operation was to go through all the storage piles and map them for salts. And sure enough, in a big, up to the telephone pole storage pile, I had the loader go in and just cut the slot. And we went in and low salts, and you get to about 7 feet down, super high concentration of salts. And it got higher and higher and higher, to the point where the water hadn't gone all the way down yet. And so, depending on where they harvested, they could kill some plants or grow fantastic plants just by the spec. They weren't paying attention to it. It's all compost.
So mix your compost really well. That's the lesson.
Yeah.
Nothing is easy though. If you mix compost really well, you then want to let it sit a good long time before you use it if you want high fungi, because the mixing tears the fungi up. So mix it really well when it's done, and then let it age out of the rain so that it doesn't get that migration, okay? That's the way to do it.
Okay, and then this NCDA test, hopefully they're getting their act back together here, but it's like $8, and it's this page, the waste analysis report, and it gives you the major nutrients, and then you can request soluble salts, which is SS, and CN, which is carbon-nitrogen ratioed. So you can start to check on your product and see if you're there yet. This particular one, CN ratio is way too high. Soluble salts, that's great, because that's 1.21. You move it over 2 decimal points to get to this common standard, which is millihost per centimeter. Not that big a deal, but just know that 121 is low. These nutrients, you move the decimal point over 4 points to get to the nitrogen. So nitrogen is 1.1% nitrogen. That phosphorus is 0.24, potassium is 0.93, calcium is 0.87. That's percent. And so once you get understanding how to read these tests, they're pretty decent. I skipped the recommendation part at the bottom.
Ignore it.
Those salts aren't really high if you're using the compost, because you're not going to grow in 100% compost ever. It's just not worth it. A lot of reasons why you wouldn't. One is one of the most important things not to grow in 100% compost is compost holds 3 times its weight in water. And I've sold it to people, and they put it in like in between railroad ties, like this deep, and you get one of these springs where you get all this rain, and there's water ponding. And the plants are really growing in water now. So you're like at 80 to 90% moisture content. And there's still compost there, but
indeed, it's going anaerobic. So instead of being good for the plants, there's toxins happening, because you can't get any oxygen with that much water.
Okay, so
question though, I was looking on the Frog Holler website the other day about their compost, and they actually recommend that you lay it down a layer of 6 inches deep and do not mix it into your garden soil. That you just leave it on top, because they say that it'll mess with the microbial action if you actually mix it into your soil.
Okay, problem with leaving stuff laying out. First problem is sun.
Yeah.
So the solar activity is going to fry all the biology on the surfaces, right? And then
that's what they were saying, is that you wanted it 6 inches deep so that you can maintain the microbial action. Look on their website, that's what it says.
Well, I don't care what they're. I just know what I've experienced. First off, I don't know anybody who can afford 6 inches.
Yeah.
anywhere in the world. I don't care who you are. And then because it's laying out, the sunlight's coming in and frying your biology.
And
Now,
it dries out totally on hot days.
Yeah, it would heat up your soil a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to crash the
Yeah.
biology big time. If it's a couple of weeks without rain,
Right.
that stuff's going to be
Now,
dry as could be.
Now, if you had plants already in the ground and you're side dressing 6 inches deep, if you can afford to do that, yeah, it'll work its way into the ground over time.
So you would mix it in.
Well, if
Always.
you don't want to mix, then you put a nice heavy leaf mulch or hay mulch on top.
Well, they
to
do.
protect it.
Yeah, actually,
So you
now that
said
I remember,
that?
they do recommend that you put single ground hardwood mulch on top.
That sounds like flower beds.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You do
wood
not put wood in gardens.
has a CN ratio over 200.
Uh-huh.
So the mulch, ain't no plant's going to grow where that mulch is unless they're down below it, right?
Yeah.
The mulch is going to tie up nitrogen.
But what
So-
happens when you want to dig your carrots? The wood goes in.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if that's a path, I don't know why you'd want compost in your path, but
But if
mulch
it
on
was,
the-
No, it's for they sell it for growing vegetables and flowers.
yeah, that advice is off the wall.
They sell it as a biodynamic garden mix.
it could be biodynamic compost. But talk to some biodynamic people; they won't tell you to use double ground wood on top of your beds.
So how much do you mix of the compost with the soil? You're saying don't plant in straight compost.
Right.
So what's the ratio? Or
Depending
is
on the
it-
quality.
Okay.
Say it was real good quality, like 2 inches into 6 inches.
But it also depends on your soil test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
What kind
you-
of soil you
a
have. If you
lot
have
of
clay, it's
people-
different.
Think every year they go out and they buy, a couple of bags of mushroom compost, a couple of bags of black cow, composted cow manure, and they dump it in their beds and they work it in every year, And things grow great. But then over the years, things start to get a little weird. They start seeing some weird, discolorations and stuff. Maybe when it's cold, the leaves are purple and things. Because what they do, and this we're going to go over a whole lot more when we do soil tests in June, but the soil has a cation exchange capacity, right? The ability to hold nutrients, right? A negative charge that attracts those positively charged nutrients like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, right? And if you put tons and tons of compost in, you're going to have an awful lot of potassium, way more than you want. Because all the things we make compost with, stocky materials and stuff, lots of potassium. Next thing you know, you're not able to access enough calcium. Because there's a thing called base saturation. How many of those positive nutrients are on those negative sites? And you're at 100%. And lo and behold, you don't have but 60% calcium. The plants can't get a good balance because you've overloaded the nutrients.
Yeah, one nutrient can actually suppress another on the cation exchange sites. So if you get too high in potassium, now you're going to not have enough calcium.
I actually like to keep it so that I have at least 8 to 12% base saturation available. I'm in the high 80s, I'm happy. I'm in the low 90s, I'm starting to get a little scared. I'm in the high 90s, I got to figure out what to do. And that's our greenhouse, by the way, right now. We're in the high 90s. We're getting away with it because we're doing cover crops. We're doing things, we're using charcoal and stuff to keep moving our cation exchange capacity a little higher. And so we're able to deal with it, but the greenhouse is problematic right now because too much lime was put in. We got way too much calcium. Our pH is too high. And we have to balance it out again. And it's not easy to do it. When you overload those nutrients, it takes a lot to fix it. You could do things like add pine bark, but that's going to rob nitrogen. You could add peat moss, that'd help, but it's just expensive and not sustainable. So you really want to not overdo the compost. You want to check your soil test, see where your phosphorus is, see where your potassium is. We really encourage using the compost as a catalyst for nutrients. Small amounts with other things that get it dynamically going and let the microbes use it. And a great thing to do is to add the compost, either the charcoal added to your compost and let it sit, or put the compost down as you turn your cover crop in. Okay, and then all that life in the compost helps to stabilize the nutrients. Once again, you got that 1,100 exchanges a minute kind of dynamic, not just nitrogen, but all the other stuff. And all that readily available sugars and nitrogen from the cover crop, they get stabilized by that compost. So once again, you're using your compost not so much as a source of food, though it certainly is, right? But as a source of the life that gets your fertility system going. If your fertility system is working right and your mycorrhizae are working right and stuff, you need way less nutrients. Your amounts of fertilizer are going to be very small because the life system is so powerful.
So, like I was saying back then, how do I deliver all the biology with less stuff, right? So I could do it with compost tea, but it only lasts so long. I could do it with compost, but it takes so much compost to do it. So then it became, what's the carrier that I could work with? You know, calcined clay, which is kitty litter. Expanded shale, it doesn't hold as much. You know, I went on and on and on, and I found out charcoal holds the most. And the better the biochar, the more surface area, the more biology. So then, you know, in your soil, like there's a lot of hype around biochar. I don't know if anybody's checked out on the internet, but you know, if you just put charcoal out there, first shot out, it can tie up things because that's what charcoal does. It sucks up stuff. And so what I say is, why work? You know, why take yourself through that and not be certain what you're going to get? So load the charcoal, and so you can load it like at the farm. They just pee on it, put it in there, which is a great thing. That's a lot of nitrogen. You can blend it with compost. Again, it would be kind of like I would wait till I've gotten good pathogen kill. Maybe I'm 4 to 6 weeks into an active process. It's starting to come down a little bit, and I put maybe 10 to 20% biochar in. So that's I was into that University of Georgia trial. At 20% by volume, you got 60% increased nitrogen content of the compost, and that compost is going to last so much longer because the char is going to last so long. So now you got a more permanent storage, huge increase in your cation exchange capacity. Cation exchange capacity is kind of like a vault. How much nutrients can you stuff in the vault to grow with? Well, with charcoal, the vault just got way bigger. Your ability to hold nutrients is so much bigger. So that's why the next part of the synergy we're talking about, you made your great compost, you made your great worm casting, you made extracts. Now the extracts and the compost and the worm castings can be blended with biochar. Now you're going to hold it even longer, and you got something that's really resilient. So after, you know, everything's happened this season, there's still going to be biology hatching out. And the other thing about this is you're actually capturing carbon and storing it in the soil. It's carbon negative agriculture if you do it right. You're actually capturing more carbon than you would have burned out growing the crop. And if you make biochar right, you can make power, energy, while you're making the biochar. So all those things are a whole nother level of synergy. So, you know, all this stuff I got, you know, whenever it was 25 years ago, I was, compost is it. And it was pretty much most of it, but I just didn't know that there was other parts to it. You know, you can't get compost on leaf surfaces. Well, that's extract. Hey, it's time to go.
And not only is it carbon negative, but because one metaphor for charcoal is think of a coral reef. Because it's a good home for life, life will then build on it, right? That life will suck in,
That's like a stability.
Bring in like organic material and stuff, and it becomes dynamically carbon negative, right? Because all that life is carbon. So because it enhances life and the life keeps growing. I mean, John and I are both like, you know, when he told me that James Lovelock, who wrote about the Gaia theory, and it meant totally like we're toast, surviving populations at the poles, hundreds of billions of people dead by the end of the century because of the global cascading warming effects of climate change. You know, we're sitting there thinking, what do we do? Lovelock was really, really cynical about all that and thought it was hopeless. And then he learned about biochar. And John called me up, I guess about 2006 or 7, and said, Lovelock just said, biochar will change it. Couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't sleep that night. I really couldn't sleep. It's like, we got to do this. We have to get this out of here. You can really make clean energy. Right now, it's not affordable because we blow tops off mountains and go to war in Iraq and have nukes. But if we put the real price on energy, it's utterly affordable, it's utterly clean, it's renewable, it's work for people right here. And then that charcoal is dynamic in the soil. It gives you incredibly better soil, much better growth, better quality vegetables. And
so you can increase your holding capacity for nutrients in your garden with biochar blended with tea or compost or worm castings. And and then it's going to stick around.